Dear brothers and sisters, life is not meant to be easy all the time. If it were, Jannah would lose its meaning. Struggle would have no purpose, pain would feel pointless, but Allah, in His infinite wisdom, did not create us to be comfortable forever in this world. He created us to be tested, refined, and elevated. Many people ask, why me? Why does hardship knock on my door again and again? Why do I pray yet still struggle? Why do I try to stay halal yet life feels so heavy? The answer is not always punishment. Sometimes it is love. When Allah loves a servant, He does not always give them ease. Sometimes He gives them strength. Sometimes He gives them patience. Sometimes He gives them tears in the night so their heart remains connected to Him. Think about this carefully. The people Allah loved most were tested the most. Look at the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was the most beloved to Allah, yet his life was filled with loss, rejection, hunger, and pain. He buried children with his own hands. He was mocked, boycotted, and physically harmed. If hardship meant Allah's anger, then why would the best of creation suffer so deeply? The reality is this: tests are not a sign of Allah turning away from you. They are often a sign that He is pulling you closer. Allah tests those He loves because He wants to hear their dua when no one else can help. He wants to see their sincerity when distractions are removed. He wants to purify their hearts from arrogance, dependence on people, and attachment to this temporary world. Sometimes Allah breaks what you rely on so that you finally rely on Him. You lose a relationship so you remember who truly owns hearts. You lose money so you remember who provides sustenance. You lose strength so you remember who gives power. And in those moments when your back is against the wall, your sajda becomes different. Your tears become real. Your dua becomes honest. You are no longer performing worship, you are clinging to Allah with your soul. That is not distance, that is closeness. But here is the challenge. Patience during pain is not passive. Patience does not mean silence without faith. Patience means continuing to trust Allah even when you don't understand His plan. It means saying, Ya Allah, I don't see the wisdom yet, but I know you are wise. And Allah never wastes pain. Every tear you cry is recorded. Every night you struggle to sleep is known. Every silent battle no one sees is witnessed by Allah. Nothing goes unnoticed. Sometimes the test is not to break you. It is to prepare you. Prepare you for a blessing you are not ready for yet. Prepare you for a level of faith that requires depth. Prepare you for Jannah, where not everyone will enter the same way. Remember this: ease in dunya does not mean success. And hardship does not mean failure. True success is remaining connected to Allah regardless of what life throws at you. Some people only worship Allah when life is easy. When things go wrong, they complain, distance themselves, and lose hope. But the believer understands that Allah is the same in hardship as He is in ease. When life hurts, don't run away from Allah, run towards Him. Speak to Him in your own words. Cry if you must. Sit in silence if you can't speak. Even your brokenness is a form of worship when it brings you closer to Allah. And know this: every test has an expiry date. No night lasts forever. No storm remains permanently. No hardship is written without an ending. Allah promises that with hardship comes ease, not after it, but with it. Meaning, even while you are struggling, there are blessings surrounding you that you may not see yet. Your strength today is proof that Allah has already carried you through what you once thought would destroy you. So stay strong, not because you are powerful, but because Allah is. Stay patient, not because it's easy, but because Allah is worth trusting. Stay hopeful, because Allah never abandons those who turn to Him. One day you will look back at this test and realize it was not the end of you. It was the beginning of a stronger faith, a softer heart, and a deeper connection with your Creator. Hardships are often a sign of Allah's love. Tests are not always punishment. Allah tests those He loves to draw them closer, purify their hearts, and elevate their status in this life and the next. Hardship is one of the most misunderstood realities of life. Many people believe that when difficulties increase, it means Allah is displeased with them. They begin to question their worth, their faith, and even their prayers. But this understanding is incomplete. In reality, hardship is often not a sign of rejection, but a sign of divine attention. When Allah chooses to test someone, it is not because He hates them, but because He sees potential within them that cannot be unlocked without pressure. When Allah loves a servant, He wants that person to rise above dependence on the temporary world. Comfort has a way of making hearts forgetful. Ease can slowly disconnect a person from their Creator without them realizing it. Tests, however, awaken the soul. They force a person to pause, reflect, and turn back to Allah with sincerity. In moments of pain, the heart becomes humble, and humility is one of the most beloved qualities in the sight of Allah. The lives of the most righteous people are proof that hardship is not a curse. The prophets, peace be upon them, endured immense trials, yet they were the closest to Allah. Their struggles were not a punishment but a path of elevation. Through loss, rejection, illness, and hardship, their reliance on Allah grew stronger, and their example became a source of guidance for humanity. If suffering were a sign of divine anger, the most beloved servants of Allah would have lived lives of ease. Instead, they were tested in ways that refined their patience and strengthened their trust. Allah tests those He loves because He wants to hear their sincere supplication. When everything else is stripped away, when people fail you and solutions disappear, the heart turns fully to Allah. The dua made in desperation carries a purity that comfort can never produce. Tears shed in solitude are not ignored. Every whispered prayer, every broken plea, and every moment of patience is recorded by Allah with perfect justice and mercy. Sometimes Allah removes blessings temporarily to protect something greater. A loss may feel painful, but it may be saving a person from arrogance, dependence on people, or attachment to something that would eventually harm their faith. What feels like deprivation may actually be preservation. What feels like delay may be divine protection. Allah's wisdom is far beyond human understanding, and His plan unfolds with perfect timing. True patience is not the absence of pain, it is the presence of trust. A believer feels sadness, grief, and exhaustion, but they do not lose hope in Allah. They continue to pray even when answers seem delayed. They continue to worship even when life feels heavy. This kind of patience is beloved to Allah because it is rooted in faith, not in ease. Hardship also teaches a believer the reality of this world. Dunya was never meant to be perfect. It is a place of testing, not a place of reward. When a person understands this, their expectations change. They stop asking why life is difficult and begin asking how they can grow closer to Allah through the difficulty. This shift transforms pain into purpose and trials into steps toward spiritual growth. Every test has a limit, even if it feels endless in the moment. Allah has promised that hardship is always accompanied by ease, even if the ease is hidden at first. The believer may not see relief immediately, but Allah is already preparing it. Sometimes relief comes in the form of strength rather than change, peace rather than answers, and acceptance rather than escape. When the test finally passes, the believer realizes that it did not break them. It softened their heart, strengthened their faith, and deepened their relationship with Allah. They emerge with a clear understanding of what truly matters and a stronger connection to their Creator. Hardship, when understood correctly, becomes a gift. It is a sign that Allah cares enough to refine, elevate, and draw His servant closer. Those whom Allah loves are not spared from tests, they are honored through them. And in the end, every moment of patience becomes light, every tear becomes reward, and every struggle becomes a reason for nearness to Allah. Pain strengthens faith when it turns you back to Allah. Loss, struggle, and broken moments remove false reliance on people and dunya, teaching the believer to depend fully on Allah through sincere dua, patience, and trust. Pain has a way of revealing where the heart truly stands. When life is smooth and everything falls into place, faith can feel easy, almost effortless. But when loss, disappointment, or uncertainty enters, that is when belief is tested at its deepest level. It is in these moments that a person discovers whether their connection with Allah is conditional or sincere. Hardship strips away illusions and exposes the reality of what we rely on. Many people rely heavily on people, plans, and possessions, believing they are the source of stability. But Allah, out of mercy, sometimes allows those supports to weaken or disappear. Not to harm, but to remind the heart where true security lies. When a person is left with no one to turn to but Allah, they begin to experience a different kind of faith, one that is not based on circumstances, but on certainty. Loss is one of the strongest teachers. The loss of wealth teaches that provision is not owned by effort alone. The loss of people teaches that hearts are in the control of Allah. The loss of strength teaches that power does not belong to the body, but to the one who gives it. Each form of pain carries a lesson that cannot be learned through comfort. Allah does not teach through cruelty, but through wisdom that shapes the soul. In hardship, a believer learns sincerity. The prayers made when no one is watching are different. There is no performance, no expectation from others, only raw honesty before Allah. This is why hardship often deepens worship. A person who once prayed out of habit begins to pray out of need. Their dua becomes personal, their connection becomes real, and their reliance becomes exclusive. When Allah removes false supports, He replaces them with something greater, reliance upon Him. This reliance is not weakness, it is strength. It allows the believer to stand firm even when life feels unstable. Knowing that Allah controls every outcome brings peace even when answers are delayed. The heart learns to surrender without giving up. Hardship also purifies intention. In ease, actions can become mixed with pride, validation, or worldly goals. In struggle, intentions are simplified. The believer no longer seeks recognition, only relief from Allah. They no longer rely on their own efforts alone, but combine effort with complete trust in divine wisdom. This purification brings a level of closeness to Allah that comfort rarely achieves. There are moments in hardship when the believer feels tired, emotionally drained, and overwhelmed. These feelings do not mean faith is weak. Even the most righteous felt pain, fear, and sadness. What matters is not the absence of emotion, but the direction of the heart. A believer may cry, but they do not despair. They may feel lost, but they do not abandon hope. They may be broken, but they do not turn away from Allah. One of the greatest dangers in hardship is allowing pain to harden the heart. Shaitan whispers that Allah has abandoned you, that your prayers are useless, and that patience is pointless. But these whispers are lies. Allah is closer to the broken-hearted than to the self-satisfied. He hears the silent cries that never reach the tongue. He sees the struggles that no one else notices. Hardship is not meant to push a believer away from Allah. It is meant to pull them closer. When faced with pain, the believer has a choice. Either allow the test to weaken faith or allow it to strengthen trust. Those who choose trust find that their hearts grow stronger, even if circumstances remain unchanged. Over time, hardship reshapes the believer's understanding of life. Success is no longer measured by comfort alone, but by contentment. Happiness is no longer dependent on outcomes, but on connection with Allah. The believer learns that peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of faith within them. Eventually, when relief comes, the believer recognizes that the struggle was not wasted. It built resilience, sincerity, and a deeper reliance on Allah. Even if the pain remains as a memory, it no longer carries the same weight. It becomes a reminder of Allah's support during the darkest moments. This is how hardship transforms a believer. It removes false reliance, strengthens faith, purifies intention, and builds a connection with Allah that no comfort could ever create. In this way, pain becomes a pathway to closeness, and struggle becomes a sign of divine care rather than abandonment. Every test has a purpose and an ending. No hardship is permanent. Allah records every tear, never wastes pain, and promises ease alongside difficulty, often preparing the believer for greater blessings and higher ranks. One of the most comforting truths for a believer is knowing that no test is endless. Hardship may feel overwhelming, suffocating, and never-ending while you are inside it, but Allah has placed a limit on every trial. Nothing enters your life without His permission, and nothing stays longer than it is meant to. Even when relief seems distant, it is already written, moving toward you at the exact moment Allah has chosen. When a believer is tested for a long time, the heart can grow tired. Questions begin to surface. How long will this last? Why hasn't my dua been answered yet? Have I done something wrong? These thoughts are natural, but they are not the full picture. Delay does not mean denial. Silence does not mean neglect. Allah answers every sincere prayer, but not always in the way or timing we expect. Sometimes Allah gives exactly what you ask for. Sometimes He gives something better. And sometimes He withholds something because it would harm you, even if you cannot see it yet. A believer learns to trust that Allah's choice is always wiser than their desire. This trust becomes strongest when the test lasts longer than expected. Allah never wastes patience. Every moment of restraint, every time you hold back from complaining, every effort you make to stay grateful despite pain is recorded. Even when patience feels heavy, it is never empty. The reward of patience is not always visible in this world, but it is guaranteed in the sight of Allah. What feels like waiting is actually worship. Hardship also teaches the believer to redefine ease. Ease is not always the removal of pain. Sometimes ease is the calm Allah places in the heart while the storm continues outside. Sometimes ease is clarity, acceptance, or strength to endure what once felt impossible. A believer may still face difficulty, but they no longer face it alone. There are tests that change circumstances and tests that change the heart. Often the second is more valuable. A softened heart, a humbled soul, and a stronger connection with Allah are blessings that outlast any worldly relief. When Allah gives this kind of growth, it stays with the believer long after the hardship ends. One of the most powerful moments in a believer's life is when they look back and realize that what once broke them no longer has power over them. The pain that once felt unbearable becomes a memory rather than a wound. The fear that once consumed them becomes a reminder of Allah's protection. This is how Allah turns trials into testimonies. The believer also learns that strength does not mean never feeling weak. Strength means continuing to turn to Allah even when energy is low, motivation is gone, and hope feels fragile. Even showing up with a broken heart is strength in the sight of Allah. Even whispering a dua through exhaustion is an act of faith. Allah reassures the believer that hardship is temporary, but reward is eternal. This world, with all its tests, is short. No pain lasts forever, but the reward for patience lasts beyond imagination. When a believer keeps the hereafter in perspective, the weight of dunya begins to feel lighter. Every trial prepares the believer for something ahead. Sometimes it prepares them for ease, sometimes it prepares them for responsibility, sometimes it prepares them for Jannah. Not everyone enters Jannah through the same path. Some are elevated through gratitude, others through patience, and others through silent endurance that only Allah witnesses. When relief finally comes, it often arrives quietly, not always with dramatic change, but with a sense of peace that settles in the heart. The believer realizes that Allah was present the entire time, guiding, protecting, and strengthening them in ways they did not notice before. And even if relief in this world feels incomplete, the believer holds on to one unshakable certainty: Allah's justice is perfect. No struggle will go unrewarded. No tear will be forgotten. No patience will be ignored. In the end, the believer understands that the test was never meant to destroy them. It was meant to refine them, elevate them, and bring them closer to Allah. What once felt like the hardest chapter becomes the chapter that shaped their faith the most. This is the promise of Allah. Hardship will pass, strength will remain. And those who stay patient will find that every test, no matter how heavy, was a step toward mercy, growth, and eternal success. May Allah grant you patience when it's hardest, faith when it feels weak, and relief when the time is right. And may He make every test a reason for your elevation in this life and the next. Ameen.